So here is our practice for exam number 1. And each of these covers a few of the topics that you have been working with through Alex. So let's go step by step and answer them to make sure we're comfortable with the procedure and how to successfully ace this examination. So in question number 1, they're asking you to write the fraction in simplest form. So basically that means you need to look for a common factor. Between 16 and 24, you have the greatest common factor you could think of would be 8. If you divided both top and bottom by 8, you do 16 divided by 8, and you get 2. And then you do 24 divided by 8, and you get 3. Since you divided 16 by 8 and you got 2, 24 divided by 8 and you got 3, your answer is 2/3. Now someone may be saying, well, I wouldn't have realized 8. Well, that's okay if you didn't see 8 right away. Maybe you saw that it was divisible by 2. And let's say you say, okay, I'm going to divide everything by 2. If I divide 16 by 2, I get 8. If I divide 24 by 2, I get 12. And they'd be like, well, I think I can divide this even more. I think 4 goes into both of them. So if you divide by 4, 8 divided by 4 is 2, and 12 divided by 4 is 3. 2/3, same answer. So basically what I'm trying to say is, if you can't find the greatest common factor, that's okay. Pick a common factor, and you may just have to go with an extra step like you had to do here. So the answer to number 1 is 2/3. For evaluating expressions, you want to just make sure you identify clearly what the values are for the variables, and then you want to substitute them in carefully. So D is 46, then there's a minus sign, then there's a 3, and the C and the 3 are connected through multiplication, times 6. Now using order of operations, remember you do multiplication first, so this is going to be 46 minus 18, and that will give us 28. And that is your answer. Some more order of operations in question number 3. So remember, with order of operations, you have to do PEMDAS, which is please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, or meaning parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, addition, and subtraction. Remember, when you do multiplication and division, they will end up being together. And when you do addition and subtraction, they will also end up being together, meaning if one comes before the other, it's okay for those two groups. So let's do now this order of operations question. You have a big parentheses, and then you have a little inner parentheses. So we're going to work with the big parentheses and then work with the inner parentheses. So I really can't clear out this big parentheses till I work with the inside first. So in doing so, let me erase this so I can add my pieces in. We can do 13 minus 11 first. So that gives me 30 divided by 13 minus 11 is 2 times 9 minus 12. Now looking at this parentheses, I have to work with the multiplication first. So 30 divided by 18 minus 12. Then I have to still work with this parentheses, and this will give me 30 divided by 6, and the answer is 5. So just going piece by piece, peeling one layer by layer, you're able to answer this question. So let's look at number 4. Another type of question using order of operations. So the first thing we need to consider is parentheses, and there are none. Next thing we need to consider is exponents, and there is. So let's do the exponent first. So to be 6 times 3 squared, and 3 squared is 3 times 3, which is 9. Hence why I put the 9 there. Then we have to do multiplication. So you do 2 plus what 6 times 9 is, and 6 times 9 is 54. And then you add 54 to that, and you get 56. And that's your answer. So just making sure we go step by step and not skipping any of our order of operations procedures. Okay, let's do the next one. Evaluating. So order of operations still, you have to do multiplication first. So we have 3/4 minus the multiplication. Now remember, when you multiply fractions, you multiply straight across. So in doing so, we're going to get 1 times 7 is 1, and 2 times 8 is 16. And then when you add and subtract fractions, you're in a whole different world than when you multiply fractions. It's really important. When you multiply, you just multiply straight through. But when you add or subtract fractions, you need to get a common denominator. So let me bring this over to the side so we have a little bit more space to work with this. So I'm going to do it up here. I can't erase it. Here, I'll do it over here. So I have now the numbers 3/4, and I have 1/16. I need a common denominator. It doesn't have to be the least common denominator. That's helpful, but it just has to be a common denominator. But check this out. 16 is a multiple of 4, so 16 is a great common denominator. So I'm going to multiply the left fraction by 4/4, a factor of 1, so that way this first fraction will also have a denominator of 16. So this is going to become 12 all over 16 minus 1/16. And that gives me 11/16. And that's your answer. Okay, let's do the next one. So it says to simplify. So we're going to use, remember, you should always clear out your parentheses first, but the key thing you got to remember here is that there's a minus sign in front of that coefficient in front of the parentheses, so you have to be very careful. So you're going to get negative 3y, negative 4 times 5z, negative 4 times 5y. So it's going to become a negative 20z and a positive 20y plus 5z. Now, notice you look for any common terms. Common terms are those that have the same variable. So you have a negative 3y and a positive 20y, and you have a negative 20z and a positive 5z. So if I combine our like terms now, I have the negative 3y and the 20y will give me 17y. And then I have the 20z, negative 20z, and the 5z will give me a negative 15z. And that is your answer. Okay, now notice those were not equations, but now in number 7 we're dealing with equations. Prior to this we're dealing with expressions, so simplifying the expression, or evaluating the expression. In solving for u, we want to group our u terms together. So the first thing you want to do is remove the parentheses. So we're going to distribute the positive 4 into the u plus 5. So we have 11 is equal to negative 7u plus 4u plus 20. Then you combine your like terms, which in this case is the negative 7u and the positive 4u. So we get 11 is equal to negative 3u plus 20. Then we're going to bring the non-variable terms to the other side. So we're going to subtract 20 to both sides. So we get 11 minus 20 is a negative 9 equals a negative 3u. Divide by negative 3. And we get u is equal to 3. If you have time throughout your exams, I would check it. So in checking it, will you get 11 if you substitute in 3? So let's see. Everywhere there's a U, I put a 3 right here and here. So I get 11 is equal to negative 21 plus 4 times 8. So 11 is equal to negative 21 plus 32. You would subtract these. So 32 minus 21 is 11. So it worked out. Okay, so if you have the time as you take this in your time limit, I would definitely check it to make sure you are on the right track. Okay, let's do another example. Let's do number 8. I just have to erase some of this. Remember, you can always go back and rewind and pause the video if you want to see some of the work that we did earlier. So now let's do number 8. So we want to distribute that negative 3, and then we're going to combine like terms, very similar to what we did in 7. So we have negative 3v. Negative 3 times 2 is negative 6 equals 3v plus 6. So we're going to add 3 to both sides. Remember, you want to group your variable terms together and group your non-variable terms together. So the 3v's and the negative 3v on the left side will be removed. The negative 6 gets brought down, 6v plus 6. Divide by 6 on both sides. You get negative 12 is equal to 6v. Divide by 6. Negative 2 is equal to v. So now we're going to substitute it in to do a check. We want to see if the left-hand side equals the right-hand side. So you're going to have negative 3 writing it out, hold on. So I'm going to put in the negative 2 for the v, the negative 2 for the v. So when I do the right hand side, I'm going to have negative 3 times 0, and I get 0. But let's check out the right hand side now. I'm going to have negative 6 plus 6. Oh, and that's also 0. So yes, it does check out. So we know our answer is negative 2. All right, so now let's do number 9. So number 9 is a equation with fractions. Now, notice the question says to simplify your answer as much as possible, meaning that you want to make sure there's no more common factors, kind of like question 1. So we have negative 5 over 7 equals 1 over 2v minus 2 over 3. Now listen, this is just like if the coefficients or the numbers were not fractions. So imagine if it was, how come it's not erasing? Imagine it was just, hold on one second. Imagine it was just negative 5 equals 1v minus 2. That's what it is. The only difference here is that there's different denominators. So don't be worried about that or concerned. The procedure is still the same. So you want to combine your non-variable terms, your non-v terms, to one side. And since the 5/7 is already to the left, I'm going to add the 2/3 to both sides. Okay, I just threw it up over here to make it a little bit more neat and organized. So you add the 2/3 to both sides. Now, thinking back to the questions that we just worked with fractions, you need a common denominator in order to combine these fractions. So you have a 7 and a 3. I would just multiply them together, and that gives you 21. So that's going to be your common denominator. It actually is your least common denominator. So we're going to multiply the numerator and denominator of the first fraction by 3 over 3, and the second fraction by 7 over 7. So we're going to get negative 15 over 35 plus 14 over 35 equals 1 over 2v. When you now can add the numerators together and you get a negative 1 over 35 equals 1/2 v, and you multiply both sides by 2 over 1 or 2, and so you're going to get negative 2 over 35 is equal to v. And you can't simplify that anymore, right? Because 2 does not go into 35, and that is your final answer. Okay, let's take a question and look at question 10. Question 10 is another fraction question, but question 10 has a denominator of 4, a denominator of 8, and technically a denominator of 1. You can clear your fractions. The way you can clear your fraction is to multiply both sides by the same number. And in this case, you want to multiply it by a common denominator. If you notice, 4, 8, and 1, the common denominator, really the least common denominator, is 8. So we're going to multiply both sides of the equation by 8. And so this is what it will basically look like. You also could have written it as 8 times the first fraction equals 8 times the second fraction minus 8 times the next term of that right-hand side. So technically distributing the 8. I usually skip this whole first step and I just multiply 8 to every term on both sides of the equation. Okay, so now let's do some cleaning up. 4 goes into 8 2 times. 8 goes into itself 1 time. And there's no way you can clean that up with division. So my first fraction becomes 2 times 7w plus 9 equals, the 8's divide into each other. You're left with 9w minus 3. Because this is just a 1 here, the 1 does not change any signs. And then 8 times 7 is 56, but it's going to be negative. So let's do a few things all at the same time. Let's distribute in the 2, so you get 14w plus 18 equals, and then let's combine this, 9w minus 59. Let's bring the w terms to the left side and the non-w terms to the right side. So we're going to minus 9w to both sides. And that leaves me with 5w. We'll minus 18 to both sides. And that leaves us with 59 plus 18, and keeping it negative will give us a 77. So w is equal to 77 divided by 5. And that's your answer. Okay, let's take a look at number 11. An item is regularly priced at $50. It's on sale now for 60% off the regular price. So it's 60% off of $50. What is the sale price? So 60%, so you could do this as the is over of, or the part over whole, equals the percent over 100. If you're going to do it in that route, you're going to do the 60 over 100. The part we don't know, because that's the sale price. The whole is 50. The other way to do it is just to do 0.60, which is 60%. Of means multiplication, so of 50. And that would also give you your answer. So let's go about it part over whole real quick. I'll come over here to the side. So you're going to have 100x is equal to 60 times 50. And 60 times 50 is 3,000. Divide by 100, so you have x is 30. You could have also done just 0.60 times 50, and you'd also get 30. Now think, and always make sure it makes sense logically. You go to the store, you pick up something, it's $50. You have a coupon for 60% off, which is an amazing coupon. You give them it, you hope that it's going to be significantly less than what you would have purchased, so you would have saved $30. Now that's not your price, right? This is what you're saving. So what's the actual price of the product? So it's going to be $60, no, $50. The original price minus your savings. And so the sale price is $20. Let me tell you, this is where most of the errors occur, and that idea of saying, well, what are you answering? The sale price, they're not asking for what the discount is, that this is the discount, right? That's your discount. That's your price. You know what came up is a little bit of a caution tale for me is right now as I was saying this, 60% off, I'm like, well, definitely can't be 30, Because what's 50% off of 50? That would be 25. So you're not paying $30 for 60% off. That's your discount. That's what you're saving. Okay, that's what that coupon's saving you. Okay, let's take another example. Okay, we're going to graph the inequality on the number line. So notice that it's a greater than symbol. That means it's going to be an open circle. So you go and you find -5 and you put the open circle. Or it's going to mean it's going to be those soft or rounded brackets. B is greater than -5, which means that it's got to be bigger than it. So one way that you can see your answer is going to be written like that. Or the other way is going to be with a soft bracket out like that. Okay? Next one, remember what this means. Graph the set for all x such that 4 is less than x, which is less than 7. Again, it's those less than or greater than symbols, no equal tos. So that means you're going to either have an open circle on those numbers, and not at -4, of course, at +4 and 7, and it's connected between them. Or you're going to write it with those brackets on the number lines. Writing the set using interval notation would be 4, 7. Okay, now solving the inequality, just like solving an equation. So we have -10 minus, oops, don't know why we moved there. -10 minus 6v is greater than or equal to 20. So let's add 10 to both sides. -6v is greater than or equal to 30. Now remember, you're dividing by a negative. I'm guaranteeing you they're going to have a division by negative. So you have v is equal to, equal to, sorry for that, v. Now because you're dividing by a negative, this has to flip. And 30 divided by -6 is -5. What this would look like on a number line, if -5 was here, it'd be a closed circle, and it would be pushing out to the left side, or you would use those hard or rigid brackets. If you're going to write it in interval notation, it would look like this. Lastly, let's do number 15. It's like number 14 in that you're solving an inequality. The only difference is that there's a variable on both sides. So let's bring our variables together. So if we have a -5/4 y to both sides, so you're going to have -1 is less than or equal to 6y minus 5/4 y minus 3/2. And let's add 3/2 to the other side. So we're going to have -1 plus 3/2 is less than or equal to 6y minus 5/4y. And right now I say, okay, I have fractions on both sides. I have to either combine these, or I have to eliminate the fractions like I did in one of the previous examples. Both of those strategies will work. You just got to pick one that you like. So let's get some more workspace here. I'm going to combine fractions because I think that's probably something you need more work with. So I have -1 plus 3/2, and then 6y minus 5/4y. So let's work with this one first. My common denominator is going to be 2. So I'm going to multiply top and bottom of the first fraction by 2/2. So it's going to be -2/2 plus 3/2, which will give me a 1/2, right? Because -2 plus 3 is 1. You keep the denominators the same when you add or subtract. Keeping the less than or equal to symbol, we now want to find the common denominator for here, which will be 4. So we're going to multiply top and bottom by 4. So you get 24/4y minus 5/4y. And again, you only add and subtract to the numerators. So you're going to get 19/4y. Now, we can multiply both sides by to get rid of the fractions. Remember, if you're dividing, or you can divide by a fraction. If you divide by a fraction, it's the same thing as multiplying by the reciprocal. I'm not dividing by a negative number, so this sign is going to stay. But this is going to be the same thing as multiplying by 4/19. Remember, when you divide by a fraction, it's the same thing as multiplying by the reciprocal. So the 2 goes into 4 2 times. So 2 over 19 is less than or equal to y, or we can write it as y is greater than or equal to 2 all over 19. Now, I feel like I need to show you the other way as well, so let me just do that up here. So noticing from right at the original question, right here, I'm going to rewrite that. So I have 5/4 y minus 1 is less than or equal to 6y minus 3 over 2. Let's say you wanted to clear the fractions. So you're going to multiply both sides by the least, the common denominator that you're going to cross out. So I'm going to multiply both sides by 4. So 4 into the first term, 4 times the second term, 4 times the right side. So what you do to one side, you do to all sides. So now notice that the 4 goes away with the first one. 4 gets multiplied by 1. 4 and the 6y. And then 2 goes into 4 2 times. 2 times 3 is 6. So see how it just cleared out all those fractions right away? Now we combine our like terms. So I minus 5y to both sides. I'm going to add 6 to both sides. So this gives me a positive 2 is less than or equal to 19y. And divide by 19. And you get 2 over 19 is less than or equal to y. And that is the same thing we got here. You can choose either way to go about getting your answers. Okay, so now the entire practice for exam 1 has been gone through. If you have any questions, firstly, rewind, pause, go back, rewatch this. I very much recommend you redoing the test a few times to make sure you can get these questions right without having to watch the video. I also recommend you do that as if you were going to take the test in person without having to reference your notes. I do know that you feel like, oh, you're home, you might be able to see your books and your resources throughout while you're taking the test, but you're going to find that it's timed, which means you do not have the liberty to go back and research things. You want to make sure that you're comfortable with these material, that you don't need to keep going back and looking, because you're not going to have the time to do so because the exam is timed. So practice this as if you are sitting in the classroom, live in person, taking it without any other items at your disposal. With that, if you have any other questions, please feel free to email me as you practice.